Good morning, everyone, in person and in line. Welcome to the IOF Weekly Seminar Series. My name is Dave Rosen. I'm coming to you from the Point Grey campus of the University of British Columbia Institute for the Oceans and Fisheries, which we are fortunate to be guests here on the unceded, traditional, and ancestral territory of the Musqueam people. Today we have a speaker that may be familiar to many of you. Dr. Rashid Sumaila. Before we get to him, for those who haven't been to the online portion of the seminars before, we'll have a question and discussion period at the end. Simply raise your virtual hand or type your question in the chat box and we'll get to it at the end of the seminar. So it's now my pleasure to introduce our speaker, Dr. Rashid Sumaila. I could spend most of the seminar giving a list of his accomplishments, but I think we'd much rather hear from him than me. He is a professor and Canada Research Chair in Interdisciplinary Oceans and Fisheries Economics here at the IOF and also at UBC's School of Public Policy and Global Affairs. He has numerous accomplishments and awards, and I will not belabor the point, but try to provide some of the highlights. He has the Outreach Award from the American Fisheries Society, the Peter Wall Institute for Advanced Studies International Roundtable Award. He has UBC's Killam Faculty Research Prize for Outstanding Research and Scholarly Contributions. He is a winner of the Volvo Environmental Prize, the Peter Benchley Ocean Award for Excellence in Science. He is a Fellow of the Royal Society of Canada and a University Killam Professor here at UBC. So it's my great, yeah, that's it. So any questions, it's my great pleasure to introduce Dr. Rashid.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so thank you very much, David, and thank you all for coming, both online and in the room. Yeah, it's nice to be able to get to talk at home, right? We run around, faculty and members of this place. We go all over the world and talks, and you don't hear us talking. But I think this time there's more of us actually talking, which is great. So this is the title of the talk, which is the title of our paper. There are a number of co-authors in the room. And I want to start with the title, because I think it's very loaded there. Utilizing basic income to create a sustainable, poverty-free tomorrow. Isn't that nice? Who in this room doesn't want a sustainable, poverty-free world in this room? There are some people outside this room who don't want that. They want to wreck the environment and make life difficult for people. We don't do that. We really try to make sure as many people in our environment are doing well as possible. But what is basic income? Essentially, is the idea that we give unconditional, that's important, you don't have to work to get that money. Unconditional, regular, has to come regularly. And it's a cash disbursement, you give people real cash, and you can give it to either a group of people or the whole country, or even the whole world, So it's quite an idea that has been going on for long. I didn't know until I started dabbling into this, and then there is it is universal if everybody is qualified for it. So you can choose to do a segment or the whole. Like in our paper, we talk a lot about people living below the poverty line, or people who cannot meet their basic needs. And then we also do for the whole population of the country and therefore the world. So that's the basic stuff. When you start talking about basic income, a number of people go after you. They say, this is socialism. They even talk about communism and so on. So one of the first things I did is to look at, and we have it in the appendix of the paper, it is unbelievable to see the countries and the people who actually support this over time, I just have a few photos here for you. So the top ones are Nobel Prize winning economists, including Milton Friedman and Amartya Sen, and more. Joe Stiglitz is on it, right? And we have James Tobin. So they are top economists who actually, for different reasons, actually like universal basic income, and they argue for it. And in the middle there, those, I don't have to give you the names. Anyone in this room will know We have King himself. He talked a lot about this. And then you have Obama, you have Bishop Tutu, and you have, who knows the last guy in the picture, on the second row? Nobody knows it. Oh my gosh. Andrew Yang, who ran for president of the US. And one of his key thing is pay every American $1,000 a month. And I think that propelled him to some level, actually, until he lost gas. But yeah, that was his theme. Is give people basic income, and that will solve a lot of problems. Then at the bottom, these are business people. I think this guy was one of the leaders of AI. The British guy. You know this man. Who doesn't know this guy? I don't know whether now he still believes in this, because there were days he was a hero for many. I'm not sure. And of course, the Facebook guy. So this is far from socialism. It's people thinking in different ways and coming to the conclusion that maybe the world will do much better if we can give every person basic income so they can meet their basic needs. Remember, we're not saying make everybody rich. You have to work hard to be rich, but at least your basic needs. So that is something just to push away those who will quickly call me a socialist, which is not a bad thing, actually. In some places, it's an insult, but okay. Yeah, but it's also controversial. And some of the things when you talk about it, that people will come after you, they say, but this is going to be very costly, which is true, right? If you want to give all Canadians or all Americans or even people in the world, basic income is going to add up very quickly. And whether it is feasible at all. And these are things we take up in the paper. And the big one, people say if you give some people basic income, they will choose not to work. It's a disincentive to work. And in the paper, we describe this a lot. We give examples. Alaska does it in a way with their oil money. Every Christmas they give, and actually those who receive it do more part-time and they go to school. In countries like Iran, they actually do it. And again, we don't see this incentive. Brazil did some with the first coming of Lula, and people actually invested, and so on and so forth. Then inflation is a big issue in economics. If you pump money into an economy without increasing productivity, that will lead to more demand chasing fewer goods, and you see inflation. Again, when you look at the data, actually, we don't see much inflation after this is put into place. In Iran, people saw about 15% increase in inflation. But in our paper, I put a sentence and say, with Iran, you cannot attribute this just to basic income. There are lots of political and issues there. And then they talk about undermining the existing welfare system, right? So the idea is if you take money to do this, you may not have money to target specifically people who need it. And that's an issue to discuss. And then social inequity, especially the universal one, is supposed to go to everybody, all citizens, whether you are Elon Musk or you are a student at UBC or a farmer in sub-Saharan Africa, right? You get some money. So people say this is really not equitable. It should go to those who need it more, some will say. But there are advantages to that. In Norway, they have this thing that they pay children up to maybe 16. You get monthly allowance to support the family, and they give it to everybody, millionaires and non-millionaires, people struggling. And I think they say that the reason the thing has survived so far up to now is because everybody gets it. If you target only the vulnerable, some of these rich people will come to pay the whole thing. So there are reasons why you want to do it globally. Now, but still, why are so many people interested in this? It comes up and then it dies down and comes back again. It's common arguments for implementing poverty reduction and economic security, which is fundamental to our paper, actually. Poverty reduction, if you can support people basically to have their basic needs, I think that's good. And I'll talk about the security, which really drove this, the development of this paper. COVID was one. Then you have adaptation to automation and job displacement. Elon Musk, that was his reason for supporting this. So with AI, very soon many people will have no job to do technology. So he says we have to give people basic income, otherwise there will be craziness in the country. So the people have different reasons, as I said. Improve health and well-being is another thing. We know that if people, their basic needs are met, in general, that makes people happier, healthier, and more. Rather than if you wake up and you don't know where to get breakfast for your kid, just think about it. And there are tons of people in the world who wake up every day like that. And then you provide a safety net. And I think this is very important. Safety net that encourages people to take risk and become more innovative. In fact, countries, and this is another reason why I came into this, because I see that the world is being held down because many of us are really at the brink, you know. And when I talk about subsidies at the WTO, developing country, people say, Rashid, what are you talking? You want our people to starve without the fish? They can't do anything subsidy. So if we have this, that excuse will be taken and we can do better. We can manage our world better. So that is another reason. And I've just told you some of the things. So more direct motivations for our paper. We realize that fish cannot carry all the fishes who want to sit on their backs. The fish just can't do it. And in this paper, Giron, he was then at Stanford, NICE with the World Economic Forum. We looked at the question we ask is if the world's fisheries are managed optimally, you have the optimal thing, will that be able to give people the even basic income? And the answer is no. Even at best, there's just too many people want to sit on the back of the poor fish. It's not going to work. So you have to look somewhere to do this. So that's one reason. Then the fisheries subsidy argument, I told you. In fact, the first time I just shouted this out at the WTO big room with all the countries. I was on a panel, and anytime you hear this, I said, you know what we need to do? We need to give everybody basic income. And the room went quiet. And I said, I see you are looking at me. You want to say, where will we get the money? I don't know where, but you guys know. You are the guys hiding the money, telling government officials this. So that was where it started. And then COVID really made me to start worrying. You remember how we all had to run into our homes and hide away from the virus we cannot see. People lost their jobs and government had to pump a lot of money, right, to keep people alive. And that was the reason for the inflation that politicians go after sitting politicians for. But every economist will say that's what happens. If you're hiding at home, no production, and there's money to spend, you're going to get inflation. My feeling is that if we have basic income, actually, that need wouldn't have been there because it's already built into our economy and our system. We know that nobody will survive. So all this ad hoc thing will not happen. So that's a direct motivation for our paper. Now, what did we do? People always ask you about the cost. So we went out and calculated how much it will cost. And in economics, you talk about direct costs, the money you actually give people. And there are also indirect costs, because if you tax somewhere to do that, for example, that can introduce distortions. I'm not going too deep into the economics, but we calculated the total cost for 186 countries. So we went global. Yeah, this is not, you either go big or you go home. Is that Texas, right? I think the problems of the world are so big, playing around, tinkering in the corners will not do it. You got to go big. So this is the idea here. So we calculated, and there are lots of terms here, like the marginal cost of public funds. And so we did the economic thing, which shouldn't bother you too much, but we calculated the total cost. So that is one of the big things, calculated total cost. Then that's, and this is more data, right? Step by step, how we do it. The key thing is to read the paper, actually. But we're able to find data for about a total of 61 countries, right? and then raw data. So we did our usual thing to estimate, to fill the gap. So we had data, some estimation, either real data or an estimate for all the 186 countries to be able to do this calculation. Then we say, what is the benefit of this? And here we relied on the fiscal multiplier thing in economics. I don't know how many people have heard about this. The whole idea is that if you get an extra dollar today, everybody in this, two things you can do with the money: to spend it or to save it, right? Very simple. And so economists use this to calculate what we call the marginal propensity to consume. So you get a dollar, if you spend 80 cents out of it and save 20, that 80 cents goes into the economy and generates more economic activity, because you pay somebody else or buy something else, and they also do. They save some and they spend some, and that goes. So that's a multiplier effect. And there are ways to calculate this. So if you spend 80 cents out of $1, actually the multiplier effect throughout the economy is 5 times what you got. So that can really multiply. And that is the basis for calculating our benefit here. So you spend something, it goes into the economy. And the nice thing is the people who are living below the poverty line, they virtually spend all the money you give them. So their multiplier effect is going to be much larger than people who are okay, because, you know, you want rent, you want a place to stay, you want food, you just spend it if you are in need. But if you are fine, what do? You forget the money even somewhere, right? So that is another reason to, and this is a very quick explanation of serious economics here. But so we collected our data, did the calculation, and one key thing we calculated is the benefit cost ratio. You know, so you calculate the benefit, you calculate the cost, you divide, and you get the ratio. If it is greater than 1, then you are in good business. Greater than 1 means you spend $1, you get more than $1, and that's what you want. If it is below 1, then it's not good business. Economists will not do it. Crazy economy. So, and like I said, for 186 countries, we did this. So the big idea, I think what we really innovated here is how to pay for this. You're not supposed to be able to read everything. Maybe some of you can. The younger ones, you can read, right? If I was sitting there, I won't be able to read that. How many people cannot read this? I can almost tell. No, I wouldn't name names, okay? But we said, you know, the key thing is how to pay for this. Everybody will ask you. So we coupled sustainability and the social issues, move people out of poverty. And we said the way to do it is for society to find a way to tax those who are causing the mess in the environment. And this is also not a new idea. It's deep in economics. We talk about let the polluter pay principle. It's a whole principle in economics. If you take out oil sands, and that is killing the environment and polluting the people, you should internalize it. You should pay for that, because you have to pay for your mess, right? In the legal system, that's what they do. If you take somebody to court for defaming you, the court is trying to make you whole, as they say, to bring you back to where you are. So they should do that. And our argument is that if we do that for climate change and other pollution, for overfishing, cutting of the trees, and so on, there will be more than adequate resources to do this. The other thing is all the subsidies our governments are giving up. According to the IMF, governments around the world are giving the oil and gas sector, who can guess how many $1 trillion a year? $6.4 trillion of your money goes to the fossil fuel industry that is killing the planet with greenhouse gases. So that is the mechanism here we use. We say, you take from here. And if we do that, actually the inflation will no more be a big deal, right? Well, you are not printing money. The problem is if you print money, because we are sucking up demand from the big polluters and transferring it to people who really struggling to meet their needs. So it's quite a nice a nice solution. I call it saving two birds with one stone, you know. So you save the bird, you don't kill it, right? The bird, right? I'm trying to get it. So you save, and actually after we published this, I got a lot of feedback from people. This guy wrote by, said, actually, you're going to save more than two birds. They say forced migration will reduce, right? Isn't that true, right? People are in their coastal places, there's no fish. They get onto any rickety boat to get to Europe. I'm talking about West Africa, but it's happening around the world. Many of them sink and die with our parts of our hearts, those of us who care, and the rest get to Europe and all the social and political problems. If you do this, you can actually reduce forced migration because people don't just want to move. And I tell them, where was I? I was telling them that this is not an African thing or Mexican thing or anything. Every human being, if things are tight in a place, you move. And I tell them about Norway because I know Norway. Where did I do this? Maybe in Colombia, I told them. When I was in Norway, I used to hear the saying that if not for potatoes, and immigration, there will be no Norwegians on earth now. There was a time Norway was so poor, potatoes was what they ate, and those who could get out got out. So there's no Mexican or African or Latin American or Asian thing, no. So if we want the world to stabilize, no forced migration, those of us who are in a position have to do what we can do to make life livable everywhere. Otherwise, they're gonna come. Just today, I saw a headline, was it IPCC or one of the big bodies says, there will be 1.2 billion people, forced migration people because of climate change. 1.2, and no walls can stop them, right? No walls can stop them. I like saying this in the US. Anyway, so this is the thing. So I've talked about how we calculated, more details in the paper, how the benefit you get and how to fund it. These are really the big questions that people ask when you talk about this. So a little bit of data. So this is just raw data from what we collected. You see in the first column, we talk about the various variables. So number of countries that are low HDI countries, low human development index countries. So essentially, these are the poorer countries of the world. We're not using GDP, we use HDI, which is a UN way of measuring the well-being of people. Income is there, but that's not the only thing. I think they have about 3 indicators in there. So we use that. So we split the world's countries into low HDI, medium HDI, and high HDI. And if you look there, you see the number of countries, about what? Over 20 are low HDI. You have 105. It's nice, right? Most countries are actually in the middle, which is not too bad. And then you have 58, which are in high. For me, just getting this data gave me some information. I used to think that most countries are low HDI in the world, but this says it's not actually. So imagine we want to focus on the low HDI countries. 1 billionaire can pay for their basic income, I can almost assure you, right? So that's that. Then you look at the population who are in these categories, in these countries. Again, the middle is really heavy. Over 5 billion people are living in middle HDI countries. And Canada is in the high, as you would expect. Then look at the labor participation, right? And low HDI, less than 40% of the people are working. They're not working, unemployment or lack of skills or whatever. But then as you move up, you come to this part, about half of the people in Canada on average, this is an average, are working, right? There are all sorts of reasons it's half because you have kids and underage and sick people and so on. So you have lots of data here that we put to lay the foundation for our analysis. And as you go down, you see some of the things we multiply to calculate out in the average physical multiplier, right, for different categories and different countries. So there was a lot of work put into this, and somebody in the media said, we're just amazed that anybody can do this kind of analysis, take the whole world and do something like this. So that is nice to hear. And here, I'm not telling you to read it, just to tell you there's a lot of detail. We go by continents, we go by countries, so one of my goals is to take this thing, create a project, have people in each continent that will put our heads together to see how to start implementing this. And it's amazing when this was published, I got to know there's a huge community.
And so it reset your Zoom.
Oh, yeah. So the machines are doing their own thing here. Those on the line don't hear me now, right?
Yeah, they can hear you.
Oh, they can. Okay. So I should go.
Yeah, we just can't see the slides.
Oh, yeah, those of you online. Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, please. Yes, very good. Let's get it. Yeah.
Do you know when the idea of BI was first emitted?
Yeah, I don't know exactly, but it's a long time. It's really a long time. If you think of Martin Luther King was talking about that, so that gives you some. It's certainly earlier in 1900s, and there are people on this list that have talked about
And
it
you
much
were
longer.
thinking of communicating Marx, Engels, so these guys, they spoke about it?
Who?
Do you know if they spoke about it, Marx?
Yeah,
Engels?
Marx will probably have done so. Yeah, given his interest, right? Yeah. I think so. I haven't seen his name on the search we did, so it's probably at a much higher level. He probably wants to make everybody rich on this spot. Are we ready? Yeah. So that's that. So this gives you an idea of the kind of, and this is if you just do with the population of the world living below the poverty line. And each country have their estimates. So we use country estimates for this. And one referee went after me. I was talking about, or we were talking about equity. And this is no, this thing will not do equity. You're just trying to reduce poverty, really, because Canadian person living below poverty line will get much more money than somebody living in Gambia, because their country estimates are based on their economic conditions. So that's why it's all about poverty in our paper. The review process is good, right? So that is for those below poverty line, and this is if you take all of us, if you consider everybody, that is the thing. And it also turns out that in the developed world, actually, the impact is high. For some reason, the multipliers are higher. So then you have more effect. Yeah, and I have numbers that are really numbers. This is a crazy brave estimate, but if we were to develop into the continental thing, we'll take each continental number and try to deal with it. And this thing also is practiced around more than you think, actually. When I gave a talk, a lady came to me after that and said, in Baltimore, they are actually implementing this in some cities. In California, they do have this. So Finland, they've done a plebiscite, I think 2 times so far. The last time it was close to 50%. Maybe the next time they'll get over 50 and Finland will actually have universal basic income for all citizens. So it will vary from place to place. Some people think that if you're poor, that's a curse for you. God made you poor, so what can I do about it? That's what I'm saying, right? So it's not going to be easy in all places, but the key thing is to start. You never know, right? So again, this is another way we summarize this journal. They let you do this kind of diagram. Luis, you are here. You did this actually. That diagram is yours. So if there's anything wrong, you can get hold of it. Yeah, but it's nice. Yeah. So that is that. And when we published this, we got so much attention. The attention is still going on. I think next week, Monday, UBC, the UBC paper is going to write about this. It's happening. I was being chased all over for interview. I mean, it's remarkable. So there's a lot of interest. And we are just starting something here. And I think with enough pushing, actually, at least my hope is I will be able to get it done in some places. We use only public sources of funding here. But hey, how about if Gambia, you know how many people in Gambia? The population is about 250, 500,000 people, that's it. I could convince somebody to just do it for Gambia and so on. So that is what I have for you. There's a lot of time for discussion, which is great. You already started, so let's get going. I think I'll just say thank you. So the basic income could help us save more than two birds and with one stone. And I like that saying because people always.
Yeah, let's go. Okay, so we will we'll let you know if there's any questions online. But for the people online, if you could summarize any questions you get from the room, so people online can hear them.
Okay.
Okay, but I'll let you field the questions.
Yes, let's go.
Just going up, I will replace stone in your last statement by banknote.
Banknote. Yeah. Save, yeah, and somebody also, I mentioned this and somebody came to me and said, he said, save the birds by giving them scones. So people have different ways to say this. I just picked up the stone because it's a saying that kill 2 birds with 1 stone. I actually said it at a conference and there was a lady by me. She said, "No, Rashid, you don't kill them." I said, okay, let's save them. And then she smiled. And since then, I've been saying that we save 2 birds with 1 stone. And they say, how do you do that? How do you do that? That's a question for you. You take the stone and chase the one who wants to kill the birds. Right. Yeah. William, please.
Thanks, Rashid. It's maybe a more than question. I think nowadays there seems to be a disconnect between facts and what people perceive, and that relates to how that can result in action. So, for example, there's so much evidence that mitigating climate change would benefit the whole world, but still no one's doing things that can achieve that. So I think my question is how do you see the pathway of they're doing the step of showing the number, but then there's also the challenge of people have their perceptions about all the bad things of the basic income that probably is not being convinced by having more facts in there. So how do you see that to overcome that disconnect?
So William's question is there's a lot of skepticism. People like I listed some, I just took the top 5 or something that I showed you. So people are really, some of us like this and some of us don't for all sorts of reasons. And it's difficult, right? Climate change is a good example. We know what is happening, but some still say it's a hoax. And these are not people like people who haven't been to, they've been to the best schools in the world. Princeton, oh my gosh. So how do you do this? The reason I still have hope is, you know, these things usually start with people beginning to talk about it. You just keep pushing, find any little way you can make a step forward, and you'll be surprised, William. Just look back. There are many things that have happened just because people didn't give up. You keep pushing it, and otherwise this world will not be anywhere where we are. I got the question in COP16 where they told me, what keeps you hopeful? I say, what else do you have? But actually looking at history, and I told them when I want to be nasty, and I actually said this, the room was amazing. I said, if I want to be nasty, I say, if not for people fighting, I will be picking cotton now, not being a professor, right? People said no. And I tell you, all the argument they are giving about climate change, the same argument they gave for keeping people enslaved. It's good for business. You know? If you do this, the whole economy will collapse. It's the same. So the thing is not to give up, keep pushing, and otherwise, what do we do? And you are here, you know, I use South Africa, and we say, oh my God, you brought the ghost of Mandela into the room. I said, and I'm also afraid to give up, because Mandela will be in his grave and say, Rashid, what are you doing? What have you seen? And you are giving up. No, you don't give up. I did that to them in Colombia. Anyway, I saw some hand up there.
So when we were in Brisbane, the WWF meeting, and I presented our ethical approach to fisheries, and we said to the meeting, what do you think? We're all going to sit around the table, hold hands, and say, and so now you're presenting, you know, it's a wonderful idea, right? That we can all agree on these good things. But I mean, if you look at like there's enough to the world, but there's still 800 million people outside it. So how do you think that this can get past the powerful interest groups that we prevent and equitable distribution of resources and costs?
So in a way, it's similar to William's thing. I did that to you, right? Yeah. You know, now she's paying me back, right? Anyway, but you are right. I mean, the thing is, this is not a kumbaya thing. It's not. It's still not. This thing you can't just do it by saying, "Oh, let's come together and do it." Some people we have to find a way. It's almost like dislodging the system somehow. And that's why I talk about the slavery, or even think about women voting, right? Look at what is happening south of the border, I mean, you know, and so this is a continue, but it's a struggle. You cannot just sit and wish it. So that was my point to you, and it applies here too. And again, as I said, when I talk about this in Sweden, they say, but Rashid, we already have something like this. So there are countries that have something close to this. In Canada, I should mention our colleague up here, our psychology professor. She became very famous. I always forget. Jia Ying, she's at IRS and psychology. You know what she did? She believes in this. So she got a grant, went to downtown Vancouver, selected homeless people and gave them $7,500 with no strings attached. Go do what you do. And then she monitored to see what they would do with the money. You know what they did? They put the money in a bank. They rented places. They went to had a beautiful shower and got new clothes. It's same thing anyone here will do, right? And I mentioned her because she got invited by the Canadian Senate to talk about this. Canada has been flirting with this for a long time, actually. There's a group, a town in Ontario, St. Catharines. They actually did this, and it was working very well until a conservative government came. They killed it. So that's the fight. So it's not kumbaya, Mimi, you know, it's the same fight you will have to fight with your ethics thing. Yeah. Yeah, the economics helps, certainly. It helps to get some people on board. If they see the benefit, that might pull some people along. The key thing is how do we get this going, because once you get it going, it's going to generate a lot of another thing. And I'm doing a little paper. Iria, you remember Iria, my postdoc? She's done and she's gone back to Spain. We're looking at this data and looking at African countries, because my belief is that if we did this in Africa, a lot of the petty corruption, there's big corruption and there's petty corruption, right? And a lot of the petty corruption, as I understand it, is because people are in their need, right? The entire situation. You wake up, your kid is sick, they can't buy the medicine. So they go to the office, you enter your file, they say, if you don't give me this, you don't get your file. If you do this, we might be able to wipe out that. So we are looking at. And there are studies that show that about 10% of any population will cheat, no matter what you do. Even the police can be sitting on your head and they try to cheat. Then there's 10% who will never cheat. Morally, they say this is wrong. There's 80% who do the economic calculation, and this kind of thing can shift some of this. So yeah, I think numbers do help. Yeah. Yes, please. Yeah.
Yes, you mentioned some example where these things happen already. But do you think, or what do you think about scaling up the process? Do you think that it should progress everywhere in the world at the same time? Or is it possible to do it little by little? And have you studied the effect of doing that little by little? Because it might not be the same if we start in the northern country and then southern than the rivers. So you think about this global implementation?
Yeah, so the question is whether the best strategy will be to start little by little or try to go global. And I think it's little by little. You just can't go global. I mean, I'm pretty sure it will not move at all in the US, given the principle of half of the population, right? I mean, the extreme religious people think that if you are poor, that is your gift from above, right? So what do you do with that, right? So there are places where this, but within the US, things that happen. I told you in California, a mayor has found money and is giving citizens of his area about what? X number of dollars. In fact, the one who created AI, or the one who I mean, there's not one person, the guy, ChatGPT, what is his name again? Yes. You know, he believes in this like crazy. And he's done a big study. He put people to really study this. And what they did is they gave people basic income, a collection, I don't know, 15,000 a year for a number of years to study it. So there are all those efforts, but it cannot be global all at once.
Yeah, but is it important to know in which sequence it must be done?
You know
what would be the effect of that in Europe, for instance? From my point of view, it will increase the forced immigration.
Yeah.
Because people will hope to have this income.
Yeah, that's true.
So, and other things, I don't know on the economic part if it will impact something, but the big company, they will be eager to rush into any weakness of the system that will help them to earn even more money.
Oh, yeah.
So I think these things should be studied a bit before going.
Oh, absolutely. There's a lot of studies to do. And I'm going to assign you an assignment now. When you go back to your office, start developing that strategy and we talk about it, okay?
I'm not starting from scratch.
Yeah, no, certainly. Yeah, I did that to Nathan Bennett. I proposed the high seas and said, Rashid, how about the social stuff? I said, well, who am I? What do I know? It's just an idea that came to me and I put it out. You are the social scientist, go study it. And I think he's written a paper or two about it. So, yes,
Great. Well, that is great to see. I was thinking about what you propose in terms of the companies who are big polluters to pay for that. And I'm wondering, because like generally a company like an oil company, for example, if they're increasing their cost with that, because this is gonna increase their cost in the end of their operation, they will repass this cost
To the
final-
consumers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
then like how do you factor in
Yeah.
this issue?
So Reggie is talking about the dynamics, one of the dynamics that can happen if you do this, right? Yeah, so big companies who supply us goods that are inelastic, you have to add the economics. The good has to be inelastic. What is an inelastic good? You can raise the price and people can't stop using it. So they really hooked onto it. What companies do generally is to transfer the tax to the people, right? So that's what you're saying. And I think this oil and gas is so vital for many things. So that it's inelastic to some extent. So there will be some transfer to consumers. But in a way, that is part of what you want. Yeah, to reduce the damage to the environment. That's why we are taxing there, because there's too much taking and pollution, right? When you do that, that somehow will reduce the demand, and that will take us to a better place, you know. So I'm not a politician, so I can say this. We need to tax, we need to pay more for some of the things if we're going to balance our environment with our living, right? Yeah, but you don't say that if you are looking for votes.
Okay. Oh, sorry, there's a question.
Yeah.
Emma?
Yeah.
Asking, how does the polluter pays tax intended to hold polluting industries financially accountable address the concern that these costs are often passed down to consumers?
That's really a similar question to what we just tried to answer. Are you done? No.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we just, I hope the one who has a question has heard the last answer. Essentially, yeah, that dynamic will happen depending on how easy it is to transfer the cost to consumers. They will do it. It's the same thing with the tariff that Mr. Trump has been talking about. Impose tariff on everything that comes from outside. It's gonna go. Americans will pay most of it. Because if you need a good, you have to buy it. So, yeah. So that's a challenge to deal with. But in general, the model actually loves that. Because we are overfishing, we are cutting trees, we are over polluting, right? So, right? Oh,
Yeah, one more question in the back. Yeah.
Provide the survival money for a group of people. Is there any possibility that a group of people, other group of people will lose the efficiency of work?
Yeah, no, that's a concern. Yeah. So she's asking whether this will disincentivize people not to work, and that has been a concern of many. If you give them, remember, this is basic living, right? To me, if you get just your basic needs and you want to go to sleep, go ahead and sleep. Yeah, I mean, what do I do with the person, right? I mean, that means the motivation level is not there, and what can you do? But at least they meet their needs. I will be happy with that. But actually, more seriously, the data shows that this doesn't happen. People actually do more. They go to school, they learn more, they start businesses. Brazil, who is from Brazil? Yeah, Lula did it in many of the villages when he came the first time. All these fears didn't materialize. Yeah, because, really, basic income and you want to go to sleep, then something is not right, Yeah, most people would like to go further and they will work harder, and they are able to work harder because they can train. They have the freedom not to worry about food and use their brain for bigger stuff. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Okay.